Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Nicole Rayfield, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our very first installment of Escape the Cape. So excited that you're here. We're going to have a good time. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to laugh a lot. And our goal is to make sure you come away, you're feeling refreshed, you're feeling like you can make it, you're feeling like for a few minutes you were able to escape the Cape. So, first, we want you to know who we are. So, just going to tell you a little bit about ourselves, and then we're going to get right into what this podcast is all about. So, I told you my name. I'm Nicole Rayfield. I have over 20 years of experience in higher education. I have 3 cats and I've been married almost 10 years. I should probably mention my husband before I mention my cats, but that's just the way my life is set up. Um, I really enjoy just enjoying life and being able to help young people, especially that's why I'm in higher ed. And we'll talk a little bit more about what my particular cape is and how I'm trying to escape it. But with that, I want you to now meet the next co-host on our fantastic podcast. That is Dr. Sherice Janae.
Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Sherice Janae Nelson. I am a preacher's wife. I am a Black political scientist. I am an HBCU advocate and graduate. I'm a mama of a Black son. And I got me a bonus daughter when I got married 3 years ago. So I am happy to be here with you guys, happy to talk about the cape that I have to put on or that I try to escape. And I am now going to turn it over to our third co-host, Miss Denise Jones.
Well, hello everyone. I am Denise Jones. I have been working in the pharmaceutical industry, not in sales, but in R&D for the last 25 years. I have 2 young children, and I have also been married about 25 years. So I'm excited to be here to escape the Cape with 2 wonderful co-hosts of mine. And let's talk in, let's dive right in, Nicole, and let's talk about this Cape and what we're going to do about it.
All right. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the idea of a cape, Um, if you watch any kind of Marvel or DC, I'm Team Marvel, but that's a different story. You'll know that superheroes always wear capes. And so when you think about Wonder Woman, think about Superwoman, Superman, the cape is one of the symbols of the costume of a person that has supernatural ability. And so when you look at that concept in literature, scholarly literature, the idea of the superwoman comes forth. And that's been attributed to primarily women of color, Black women, who have to be strong, show little emotion, and be extremely competent and on point at all times. And so that's a heavy burden. That's a lot. And so when we think about the cape and what we're trying to do in this podcast, we're really looking at the idea of getting rid of that image, getting rid of that myth that kind of weighs us down. So if your cape is too heavy, by all the things you have to do, this is the podcast for you. So with that, I'm going to ask Sherice Janae to share with us what is your experience of the cape. What's that mean to you? How does that show up in your life?
So for me as a millennial, it showed up as um, be twice or three times as good to have half as much. And it also meant, I think, in many ways for me as a young Black girl growing up in Oakland, California, that the idea of mediocrity was failure, right? And so if you are mediocre, you are failing, right? A C was an F in my household. And if a C is an F, that means you're always on a trigger. You're always on the edge. And my husband and I had this long conversation about his inflexibility, right? And he explained to me, your environment, Sharice, forced you to be flexible, right? Your environment, what you had to see, not only in your household coming home every day, not to say that it was bad or good or any of those things, but the idea of where you grew up, how you grew up, all of those things made you, forced you in many ways to be flexible. And that flexibility often becomes a burden, because now it's this expectation at all times that you can accept anything that's thrown your way. It means that you have no room for error, right? That even doing average is failing, right? And so then there's all of this pressure that's consistently, that while you're growing up is placed on you. And then when you reach this magical number of 18, right? Then what do you do with all the pressure that has been placed on you, either by parental forces, by the society itself, by the environment in which you grew up in? What do you do then with all of that pressure, right? It then becomes a burden. And it played a huge role in me, wanting to commit suicide when I was an undergrad. That level of burden, that level of, always having to have this cape on, always rushing in to save the day, always rushing in, to be perfect. And, after going through some counseling, I had to make a real hard decision about if that type of living was sustainable.
Mm, mm.
So
Thank you so much for being so transparent and sharing that, because I know there's so many working in higher ed. I know there's so many young women that resonate with what you just said about that pressure, and you can't be mediocrity equates to failure. So I just wanted to just thank you for being so transparent in that.
yeah,
I
and so
was
I
going to
guess,
say though, Nicole,
no, go ahead, Denise, because
I
I
was
was
going
getting
to
ready
say,
to ask you.
yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if, I'm not a millennial, but one of the things that comes to mind when you're talking, was that perhaps those of us who were born to post civil rights parents, where they grew
Mm,
up. I'm originally from Jackson, Mississippi, so it doesn't get more southern. It doesn't get more racist. It doesn't get more anything than Mississippi, right? All the worst stories you ever heard about anything happening in these United States happened in Mississippi. Dare I even say
mm-hmm,
Georgia, right? So growing up as a child of the post civil rights era, where they grew up not having access to things. And when they did, it was they had to be the best. So these are the we are the children, at least I am, of those who were integrating universities and colleges,
mm,
high schools for the very first time. And there was always this pressure to be perfect so that you could prove that you belonged in those spaces.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
also that because we I grew up rather knowing that it was never going to be equal. You were never going to get the same thing as someone as another person, perhaps, right? So to that idea of working twice as hard to get half as much, I don't know. I think it may be more culturally linked than necessarily generationally linked, unless it's maybe linked to that idea of here's what we have to do as a people sometimes for that pressure. Now, obviously, if your household was different and what happened in your home, that probably had some impact. But I can, as we're saying, that's what came to my mind because that was a message that my parents preached because they lived it. Like they did have
mm-hmm,
twice as hard to get half as much. They did have the hand me downs of everything, books, schools, access. And like my mom told me, she didn't recognize how poor they were
mm,
until she got to college because everybody was poor.
mm-hmm,
Well,
Every
Denise,
nobody had. Mhm.
yeah, no,
Go
no,
ahead.
I agree with you. I believe that's I call that the African American proverb. I call, working twice as hard or three times as hard to have half as much. I call that the African American proverb. What I will say about my generation is that since you were the children, I'm the grandchild. And as the grandchild, it's like whatever the children couldn't do, now you, the grandchild, should be able to do, right? And so I
Okay.
agree with you wholeheartedly about. I don't think that saying or that idea is confined to a generation. I truly believe that it is a African American proverb.
And Sharice, I'm going to agree with you on that point because I am the child of parents from, my mom was born in 1947. My dad was born in 1923. So big age difference there, right? So I grew up with a father that said, tradition, you get a job, you sit there for 50 years, you retire, you get a gold watch, you get in the field that they're always going to need people for. Um, and so he grew up in that era where stability was very important and very hard to come by, right? And my mom, she grew up as more of a free spirit. So it was the message I got from her was go do some art, go draw, relax, do something fun. So I really am a good blend of both of them. I have a lot of discipline from my dad's point of view, but I have a lot of creativity and ways of thinking about things differently from my mom's point of view. And to both of those, in that juxtaposition, the message that I got was do your best, and it's okay if you're not number one. And that was because I was a person that at 4 or 5, I had to, whatever I was going to do, it had to be perfect. I hated coloring books as a little kid because the lines were already there for me. I wanted to make my own lines. I didn't want you to tell me what lines I had to stay within. So I did great with freehand art and sculpture and painting, things that didn't have a line in it. But I didn't want crayons in the color. I don't want that. I didn't want that at all. And so I put a lot of pressure to have to create my own. And um, when you think about that, as I think about that now, I have a high need to create something. And as a person that doesn't have any biological children, but feels like I've been a mom or auntie to lots of kids throughout my tenure in life, I think that need to create comes from the idea that the message I got, which was if I can't beat you, I'm going to be better than you. I don't have to get what you have. I'm going to get something that you're going to want from me. That's kind of how that was my lens. So, and I think it would not have been that way if I didn't have those two very different kinds of messages from both of my parents in the same household. So my sister, she's straight laced, by the book, yada yada yada. My brother went in the military, real like, straight path. Me, I'm here, there, dipping, diving. My bucket list, I have kicked it and refilled it 10,000 times. And I live my life in a way that is creatively chaotic and structured at the same time. But that message of do your best, but it's okay. That helped me not to have as much pressure. But sometimes I think it made me a little more lackadaisical than I needed to be too. Sometimes I'm too chill when I need to be like go getting.
So with that being said, I think that's a great segue for the question that I have. I think then for you, Denise, is that this idea of what transpires in childhood, does it stay with you as you mature? Does the weight does the weight of the original cape ever leave, or does it just morph into something else?
Mm,
Like for those of my co-hosts who are a little further along the journey than I am, what does that look like?
I would often tell myself that I had to transform my childhood dream into an adult reality.
mm,
When I
Mm.
was a child, I loved science. I still love science today. And I never forget when I got out of college, my senior year in college, my cousin and I were on the phone. She probably didn't remember this, but we had a conversation. She was going to, we are both applying to medical school. But my father passed away my senior year, the second semester of my senior year, 2 months before I was supposed to graduate. So I had one shot to take my final exam. If I didn't pass my final comps, I wasn't going to graduate.
mm,
And I had already missed a month of school because my father had passed away. So when I got out of college, I still had this great idea to go to medical school. But here's what I did. I took the MCAT. My scores were off the chart in the verbal and writing section. The science, although I had a degree in biology, I used to joke, I can't tell an amoeba from an ant. And I
Mm,
kept taking the MCAT thinking my scores were going to change, but I had to realize maybe your real strength is not necessarily in this thing that you thought you just had to have.
mm,
So as I think about that now in the Cape, I spent a lot of time um wearing a cape that didn't fit me
Mm.
because I thought that my mother would tell you that my daughter is like me on like to the third power. And those of you who know my daughter, you know she's very animated. And I had a very um how do you say? My parents never told me no. They said, well, you have to just choose. You can't do everything, but you can pick anything you want to do. So it wasn't like do it all. So my father would say, you a jack of all trades, master of none. And I decided I was going to become a master of something because I have my pastor when I was in my early 20s told me that Denise, your problem is that you have to pick what you want to do because you have gifting in so many different areas. So, as an adult, Sharice, I had to understand, I had to learn. Didn't come easy how to take that pressure to fit in and do all the things and transform that into something that was realistic for me. Professionally, I was in the mindset like a lot of people, if you just do a good job, that'll be enough. People will recognize your gifts and people recognize that you do well and they'll just do the right thing. Nope. So I had to take that cape off. Well, it was, well, you got to look a certain way to be, received in certain places. I didn't look like that. So I had to throw that cape off. All right, what you got left? Well, um, the cape I decided to keep was the cape of my intellect because I remember telling myself when I was in the eighth, about seventh grade. By the time I was in seventh grade, I was already as tall as I am, and probably close to the size I am now. So imagine as a 12-year old being 5'5", 140 pounds. That's a grown woman size, and because of that, I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I spent a lot of time trying to be skinny, trying to look like somebody else. And then I decided, this is the craziest thing, Sharice. I said, if I get in a car accident, I might not be cute, but I sure as hell still be smart. So I decided to put that cape on. And then guess what happened, Sharice? I got vilified for being smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, well, then, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
I'm not cute. I'm not as cute as these other girls, but I'm probably as smart as anybody in the room, and I don't think like other people. I just don't. So how that transformed for me as an adult, I had to decide, like David did,
Mm.
that I can't wear Saul's armor. I got to wear something that's gonna fit me. And a lot of the capes that we wear are things that somebody else put on us, and they're not things we decided to put on ourselves. So as I've gotten older, I had to determine, okay, this cape, I don't need it. This cape, I don't need it all the time. This cape don't even fit me. I don't even look good in it. Why am I continuing to try to fit into some environment or into some cloak of something that is not even suitable for my personality?
Well, that's funny that
So,
you said something about the car accident because I had that same kind of car accident. It's funny how pretty girls have that, right? Every pretty girl that I know, so that means you're pretty, Denise, because there's no pretty girl that I know that hasn't had that kind of like revelation of, if I get into a car accident, where does this beauty go to, right? Like that is every pretty girl that I know has asked herself that question. So I'm assuming, Nicole, you've asked yourself the same one, right? And that you have to start making some decisions,
mm-hmm.
right? Because in society, oftentimes, especially if you get shapely earlier. I did as well, right? By 13, I was full. I was wearing my mother's swimsuit that she wore at 26, at 13. So I was full woman, very much like you were. And so you start to realize everybody looking at you different, and you can't really do nothing about the fact that they're looking at you different because you too young to do something about the fact that they're looking at you different. And no one really wants you to use how pretty you are to get stuff because that scene is wrong. But then when you use your intellect to do it, then that scene is wrong too. So you in there confused, like, okay, now what next? And so, Nicole, I think that's, I guess, back to you, is this idea of when you start to realize these capes are being thrown on you from other people. When was that first? I guess the question I have for
Mm.
you is, when was the first time that you realized that other people were putting capes on you that you had no intention on wearing or didn't even want?
So I didn't have I had the car accident scenario too, but it was because I was really fat when I was little. So my sister was skinny, and my nickname was Fat Mom. Okay. So I would go to school and I would get teased, and I hated my nose. Hated my nose. And the kids would call me Miss Piggy because they said I had a pig nose, and I would cry every day. My last name before I got married was Gay. And you know how you're in middle school and in elementary school, and they say your role and they say your last name first. So I was Gay Nicole. So I'm crying because I'm Gay Nicole. I'm crying because I got a big nose. I'm crying because I'm fat. And I had to be about maybe 5 or 6 when I realized, you know what? I might be all of these things, but I know I'm smart. I knew I was smart. I was reading at 4 because my dad read to me before I was 4. I was doing stuff that um, other students my age and older. I was at a 4th grade level in kindergarten. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be the smartest kid. And I began to take pride in that. And one thing that happened for me, and I'm not sure if maybe it'd be diagnosed differently now, was I have a very, very low care for what people think about me. I mean, and I had it from 4, 5, and 6. I didn't just get it because I realized you're going to think what you want to think, regardless of what I do. Now, here's the choice I have to make. I can do right as best as I think God wants me to do, or I could do wrong. Because at the end of the day, you're going to think what you want to think. I chose to do right to the best of my ability. And it was years later when I was in college, and one of my good friends said, you don't see how all the students react to you when you raise your hand for every question. I said, no, what they doing? And they was like, they all go, and I said, well, why don't they raise their hand? Because you're raising your hand all the time. I said, what I do with my hand doesn't have anything to do with what they do with their hand. As my husband would say now, what someone else's eat don't make you poop. And so I am not here for your comfort. I am not here for your inability to be as free as I'm going to be. Because at 5 and 6, I decided how I was going to live my life. And that's that. And so because I don't have a high regard for what people think about trivial things about me or whatnot, it helped me not to be as burdened by that cape. But I felt that when I was 5 and 6, I was worried about, I would cry every morning, Mom, I don't want to go to school. They're going to talk about my nose. For years, I would not get my hair done, my hair or fake hair done, with a part down the middle. Because in my mind, that part pointed directly to my nose. My profile picture on most of my professional things is a middle part at this point now. So I think that freedom is what I got early on because I just decided one day this is what it is. I leaned into my intelligence, and then I learned later in life, don't lean into anything with your own understanding too heavily because that can fail, right? And so I have a different perspective now, and I'm very grateful for everything I have. I'm grateful for anything that's good about me. I'm grateful for, because it's not me, it's God helping me be good in that. Anything that's not great about me, I'm working on it. We're all working on it. That's why we got this podcast. So you can work on it too, podcast audience. Um, but that's a great question. Thank you for taking me back. And I hope none of us get in a car accident because I want to keep looking like this and knowing what I know. So
So I think that was like that trip down. I think, we all know about being reflexive and how that helps inform, how you move
mhm.
forward. So as we sort of move forward in this podcast and our endeavor to bring light and hope to other women on this first podcast of ours. Nicole, what if you had to speak a word of encouragement or
Mm.
encourage a woman who was, maybe she's a millennial, or maybe she's even a college student, she's just starting her career, or maybe she's like, she's midlife, or she may even be a senior, trying to find her space, her voice, and escape the cape. If you had to tell her in 2 sentences, what would you say to her?
I love the word encouragement, first of all, because it means to strengthen the heart. It comes from French, to make your heart strong. And if your heart is strong, even if you're brain dead, you're still alive. So love that word. I would say to that person, to that woman, in whatever stage she's in, two things. One, you are not alone.
Mhm.
That's number one, because everybody feels alone. Every superwoman I know felt alone until they met other superwomen. And they're like, oh, wait a minute, you got a cape too? Get out of here. So you're not alone. And two, you are not yet the best version of who you're going to be. I don't care if you're 18, 28, 38, 48, 58, keep on going. You're not yet the best version of who you're going to be. And the reason I'm saying that is not to be discouraging, saying you're not good, but to let you know that whatever happened in the past that didn't work out, that's okay. You're getting better. You're getting better. So you're not alone, and you are improving every day, every step of the way. Those are two things that if you can keep that in your mind, it's going to, one, make you want to reach out to other people, because super women tend to be by themselves because they don't need nobody else. So usually when I hear a woman say, I don't really like other women, I don't really get down with other women. Yeah, you scared. You scared. And you don't want nobody to know how scared you are. So you're just going to be by yourself. But you're not alone. You got to get out there and not be alone. And then you have to keep in mind that you are better than you were yesterday, but not as good as you're going to be tomorrow. That would be my advice to anybody that's trying to escape the cape, because we're all in this together.
Sharice.
I think I remember when I went back to my high school and they asked me what would I tell my younger self, and this was like, I think 2017 or 2018. And so I'm a little further away from that now, right? So I would change up a little bit of what I said. And so I remember telling the young women that if they were anything like me, if they were hell bent on being the top, the best, the greatest, that they had to stop and pause to celebrate. That because that if you do not celebrate in proper fashion, it will rob you of the feeling of accomplishment. It will make you feel like you can never win if you do not stop to celebrate. The way that I would tweak it a little bit now, maybe 5 or 6 years later, is the understanding of it doesn't have to be as big as you think to celebrate, right? And that we think that they have to be big milestones to celebrate, right? There are some small things that you can celebrate day to day, right? As Black women in these United States of America, getting home sane can be something to celebrate, right? Once you start becoming a wife and a mother and a cat owner and a and what once you start having other people that you're responsible for, that's not just yourself, there's so much more to celebrate. You don't have to wait on the degree. You don't have to wait on the house. You don't have to wait on the car. There are smaller things to celebrate. And so the way that what I would say to a younger, what I love to say to Gen Zs who I often see in classrooms across the country is that there are smaller milestones that you can celebrate. And you know that it's time to celebrate when your heart has expanded in a way to be empathetic towards other people.
That's good. That's good. That's good. I think what I would tell another person, 2 things that I personally learned myself, one of which I just learned recently. And one was to be kind to myself. My self-talk was so harsh. I would never repeat to other people the things I've said to myself. So I would be kinder to myself, and I would tell another woman, be kind to yourself. And then another thing that I just learned, and I mean like in the last probably month, maybe 2 months, was to say, thank you, Denise. Thank you, Denise, for not giving up. Thank you, Denise, for pressing forward when you could have just went and cried under the bed. Thank you for seeing that there was another day ahead of you that maybe wasn't as good as the one, may not be as good as the one you just had, but you still got another life. You still got more coming. Thank you for not snapping on your kids when you really felt like they deserved it. Thank you, for making that call and apologizing when you know it wasn't really your fault. Thank you for forgiving people when you knew they really didn't deserve it. Thank you for being kind to yourself. It never crossed my mind in all my years to thank myself, to give myself permission to thank me, because for many years, if I had to put it in context, I thought that because that even if nobody said thank you, I would be okay with it. And in many ways I was. But when I heard myself say it to myself, I about broke down in the bathroom. I didn't know how good it would hear me say. And I said thank you to myself for the stuff that nobody else knows that I did. To myself and for other people. And sometimes thank you also means thank you for taking the time to forgive yourself for only doing what the best you knew how to do at the time. Because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, I wish I would have, I should have. Well, if you probably known, you would have, but ain't no guarantee. You make the best choice you can at the time, and then you make another choice when you get more information. Maybe. So that's our time for tonight, Nicole.
That is our time, but it won't be our last time. And in the spirit of gratitude and thanks, we want to thank each and every one of you who's watching this, and being here for our first step. It's not our last step, it's our first step. And so we want to encourage you to share this podcast with your friends, your enemies, your frenemies, anybody that you know that needs to escape the Cape. And stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to talk about the things that matter to you. So make sure you visit our website and send us feedback about what you want to hear. You can reach us on Instagram, LinkedIn. What's some of the topics that you want us to talk about? And I know that something that was said here tonight touched you. And I want you to know that you can be okay and safe with us. All right. There's very few things that whatever you're experiencing, one of the three of us or all three of us have not have also experienced. Okay. So this is a safe place. This is where you can hang your cape up at the door. It's not just a catchphrase. Our, I think, mission is to, like Denise said, bring light and hope. But also, as you can see with Dr. Sherice Janae, we're going to keep it 100% real. Okay? That's who we are. And it's okay to be us, and it's okay for you to be part of this, not just the podcast, but the experience of finding your people. We're your people. So, with that, we're going to see you again next week. And we hope that you have a fantastic week, that you soar to new heights. But when it's time to come down and chill, you escape the Cape. Take care.